Can the Oilers afford Erik Karlsson? We'll talk about that and much more on today's episode of Locked On Oilers.
You're Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to the Locked On Oilers podcast. I am your host and former Oilers game day producer, Brett Holden. As mentioned on today's episode, we're going to start off with the flavor of the week. Erik Karlsson has been linked to the Edmonton Oilers once again. How realistic is it, and what would it cost the Oilers? We will talk about that in just a second, but also on today's episode, we're going to talk about that, well, let's be frank, horrendous game by the Edmonton Oilers in Montreal as the Oilers lost 6-2 to the Habs. What went wrong for the Oilers, but what can we also pick out from that game? We'll talk about that a little later on, and we will wrap up today's episode with the good, the bad, and the ugly from not only the game against the Montreal Canadiens, but also against the Ottawa Senators. A little bit of both ends of the spectrum for the Edmonton Oilers. Either way, all that and much more on today's episode of Locked On Oilers. Thank you for making Locked On Oilers your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you find your podcast. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. And where we are going to get started, as mentioned, is with Erik Karlsson. It sounds like Jakob Chychrun is on the move, and it doesn't sound like it is going to Edmonton. And after the Chychrun news broke, the news around Erik Karlsson and the Edmonton Oilers came out, and that the Oilers are interested again in Erik Karlsson. Now, Bob Stauffer did say on Oilers Now that the price would be a 2023 first, Evan Bouchard, Xavier Bourgault, and at least 1 to 2 contracts that would have to go the other way. Now, Erik Karlsson signed an 8-year, $92 million contract back in 2019, and that contract goes all the way through until 2026-2027. That is the 2026-2027 season, and it sits at an $11.5 million cap hit. That's not easy to eat for the Edmonton Oilers. Now, there's a lot of things that would have to go into it. Let's start off with the potential trade pieces. As Bob Stauffer said, first round pick, honestly, probably 2 first round picks this year's and next year's, 1 to 2 contracts, which is interesting. We'll talk about that in a second. And Evan Bouchard. Now, they also mentioned prospects, which we'll talk about as well. But Evan Bouchard. Now, I saw a tweet today going, the same people who want Evan Bouchard traded are the same people who wanted Bear, Schultz, and Petrie traded. And? I don't understand where this argument comes from. If you're going to trade for Erik Karlsson, let's be real here, it's blocking the pathway for Evan Bouchard. The Oilers have already been adamant on the fact that they're not trading Philip Broberg. So where does that put Evan Bouchard? Not in a great spot. He has to be, in this situation, the odd man out. I'm behind that. But what are the 1 to 2 contracts that Bob is talking about? Well, we all know Jesse Puljujarvi is 1 foot out the door, basically 1.5 feet. As Jeff Merrick said on 32 Thoughts, that game against the Montreal Canadiens was the last game of Jesse Puljujarvi's Edmonton Oilers career. So we shall see what ends up happening. Now, Warren Foegele is also potentially in that same atmosphere, I guess, sitting at a $2.75 million cap hit. However, he has been better as of late, and I think he's kind of played his way back into favor, I guess, out of the trade favor almost. But then it gets to Tyson Barrie. First of all, my initial thoughts or opinion is that if you're getting Erik Karlsson, fair enough, that's basically a Tyson Barrie replacement, but that's a tough loss for the Oilers. A leader, he's had a decent season, statistically, you can take a look at the other advanced stats, and the eye test is obviously also the end-all be-all, and it's been a little bit here and there. I mean, it's not been here or there for the guy who has 18 goals, 55 assists, and 73 points, and that's Erik Karlsson. Don't know if you heard of him. But I don't think the Oilers do add Tyson Barrie in a deal. Now, first of all, that is because you're basically trading for a player who's just as old as Erik Karlsson. The San Jose Sharks want futures. That's all they really care about, and that's why Evan Bouchard would need to be included in the deal. So take Barrie out of that. Then you get to the prospects in Bourgault and Lavoie, but they don't push the needle in the case of the salary cap. So where am I going here? In order for this deal to work, the Edmonton Oilers and the San Jose Sharks would need to find a third team. It would need to be a 3-team deal, and that's the thing that I just don't understand where people aren't understanding. As soon as people go or hear that Erik Karlsson might be sent to the Oilers, immediately everybody goes, oh, they can't afford it. There's a cap, salary cap. Ah! They poop their pants and they get put back into the home. But seems like a lot of people also forget that 3-team trades are also a thing. Take a look at what happens in the NBA. I mean, hell, the NBA had a 4-team deal just last week at their deadline. That is actually in limbo, but let's not talk about that. In order for this to work, both teams are going to have to find a third team. Now, teams with salary cap who would be able to take on a little bit or a percentage of Karlsson's contract. I took a look at some of the teams with cap space, I guess. One being the Buffalo Sabres with $18 million in cap space. However, I don't think the Sabres would really be willing to tie up that much for 2026, 2027 just to help broker a deal. They're too good right now, and they need as much money as they can. We're going to throw them out of there. The Detroit Red Wings sit with a $6.5 million cap hit, almost 6.6. We'll keep them in mind. The Arizona Coyotes, however, sit at $17 million. That would be an interesting add there. We'll talk about them in a sec. The Chicago Blackhawks have just over $5.7 million in cap space. Here's my team that I think could kind of step in here. The Anaheim Ducks. The Anaheim Ducks have $13.6 million in cap space. Now, with that being said, that would almost be like the Oilers trading Darnell Nurse and then having to get the caveat of the Calgary Flames to eat up cap. Is it possible? Yes. Is it realistic? Yes. Could it happen? Less than likely. But they still have the cap space. I don't know if Arizona would be willing to take in some cap, considering that now they're in the conversations of, oh, maybe we'll take up some of Jacob Chikrin's cap. We'll see. Either way, there are teams with cap space, so the Edmonton Oilers would not need to send Tyson Barrie or something like that to the San Jose Sharks. However, that would mean another asset would have to come off the table. I would say probably like a second-round pick to eat up 25% of that contract. Now, 25% of that contract would be eating up $2.875 million already. So that would mean the Edmonton Oilers would have to eat a cap hit of $8.625 with Karlsson on that team. However, I have a whole bunch of math here. The Edmonton Oilers would, I would assume, ask the San Jose Sharks to take up some sort of retention on Karlsson's contract. So maybe, realistically, the Edmonton Oilers could get the San Jose Sharks to eat 25% of that deal. That is $2.875 again. So say 2.7 or 25% from the San Jose Sharks, 25% from this third team, the ex-third team. The Edmonton Oilers would then only have to pay a cap hit of $5.75 million on Erik Karlsson. So with the brokering of a third team, the Edmonton Oilers would potentially be able to cut down Erik Karlsson's contract by up to 50%. That is much more palatable and much more realistic. Again, I would then say the package would have to be the price of the 2023 first, the 2024 first, Evan Bouchard, and probably Xavier Bourgault going to the Sharks, and then probably a second round pick and somebody else for Puljujarvi, maybe for the retention as well. Now, I mentioned why I would trade Lavoie over Bourgault, because Lavoie has been hotter right now than Bourgault, and I'm going to be 100% honest with you, and this is a strong way to put it, but I don't know how Raphael Lavoie's skills are going to translate to the NHL. That has been my biggest thing since watching Raphael Lavoie in his draft year, since he was 17 years old. I just don't, he's a good hockey player, don't get me wrong, and you're seeing it right now in the AHL, but I don't know how sustainable and how realistic his game would be in the NHL. Would love to see him, but I don't know if this is just a hot streak or if this is the true development of the player. That is why I would toss out Lavoie in this deal over Bourgault, because Bourgault is more of a legit prospect than Raphael Lavoie. It's a hot take, I know, but that's where I'm sitting. But to recap, realistically, the price for the Edmonton Oilers would have to be a 2023 first, a 2024 first, Evan Bouchard, Xavier Bourgault, and Jesse Puljujarvi to the San Jose Sharks for Erik Karlsson with 25% retained, with the caveat that he would then be going to a team like Arizona or Anaheim in the middle, where the Oilers would then probably send like a second round pick in 2025 or 2024 they don't have a 2025 first or second round pick, sorry. But the 2024 second round pick to Arizona or Anaheim for another 25%. Then the Oilers would then only have to pay $5.75 million. How about that? And just to wrap up, to say the third team doesn't want to take 25%, fair enough. If the Edmonton Oilers can still get that salary retained to even a 40%, that means $4.6 million of that 11.5 already comes off, and the Oilers would only have to pay $6.9 million. So a little more palatable, especially with some of the players that could be coming off. We'll see. We'll see how the money works, but the Edmonton Oilers wouldn't engage in conversations if they didn't believe it was doable. Either way, speaking of doable, the Edmonton Oilers didn't do a whole lot in Montreal yesterday, as the Oilers just got slaughtered in Montreal. What went wrong for the Oilers, and what can we really pull out of that game for the Edmonton Oilers for the rest of the season? We will talk about that in just a second, but first, today's episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens. Our next partner has a product I use literally every day. I started using AG1 because I wanted to better my gut health, optimize my immune system, and I wanted to do that without taking so many pills. And that is exactly what I get with AG1. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, your recovery, focus, aging, all of the things. All while still being lifestyle friendly. Whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, it is all good for you. Plus, it contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, all while still tasting great. Plus, it costs less than $3 a day. You are investing in your health, and it's cheaper than that cold brew habit. Yes, I'm looking at you. I know you have a frozen drink in your hand. Either way, Athletic Greens has over 7,000 5-star reviews and is recommended by professional athletes. Right now, it is time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It is just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That is it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Alrighty, moving on to the game between the Edmonton Oilers and the Montreal Canadiens yesterday. And it wasn't great. A 6-2 loss for the Edmonton Oilers in, La Belle Province? I think that's how you say it. I stopped taking French in 8th grade. Either way, the Edmonton Oilers did not look good at any point other than maybe those 3 minutes after the scrap between Arbor Xhekaj and Vinny Desharnais. Yes, Vinny Desharnais getting in his first NHL fight, taking on one of the toughest guys in the league, a guy who has only one fight less than Nick Delorier, who leads the league in fights this year. Who else? Who better to take on in your first NHL fight than Arbor Xhekaj? And that's saying something, considering Arbor Xhekaj himself is a rookie. Either way, the Oilers, that is as good as the Oilers looked. The Oilers would bring back the game to a 3-2 game after going down 3-0, but 3 more unanswered goals for the Habs, and the game was over. The Edmonton Oilers, not good on Super Bowl Sunday again, not good in a matinee again. Now, Leon Draisaitl was able to get on the score sheet with a goal. He did get I believe 2 against the Ottawa Senators as well. So a nice little weekend, considering he had a little bit of a tough go since the All-Star break, but nice to see. Evan Bouchard also, I know we just talked about trading Bouchard, but Evan Bouchard also getting on the score sheet with 2 assists in a span of like 2 minutes. It was fantastic. Great to see for Bouchard getting a couple points there. Zach Hyman also getting an assist in this one, who's also, Zach Hyman has the most expected goals at 5-on-5 this year and in all situations in the NHL. Pretty impressive, above the likes of Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, Nikita Kucherov, the list goes on and on. Nobody better than Zach Hyman. Evander Kane also getting a goal in this one. In fact, didn't get the scoring started for the Oilers, but it was just that little push the Oilers needed just as the penalty expired for the Habs. Roofed one past Jake Allen, who had a fantastic game. Let's not get that mixed up as well. Jake Allen really stole the show at times for the Habs. That is his 4th goal in 5 games, especially since returning from that horrific injury. That is so great to see. And that's his 4th goal in 5 games, dating back to the Chicago Blackhawks game. So great to see him getting on that role, the player that we all expected him to be. It's really good to see. It's really good to see him get onto a role. Now, Stuart Skinner, just like all the Oilers, didn't have a very good game. 24 saves on 30 shots, had an 800 goals against, or save percentage. That's not great. Now, I got through all the bad. That's all the bad. I will say that is not a good performance. Obviously, duh. But what makes it worse is that the Edmonton Oilers, even if it was temporarily, the Edmonton Oilers had an opportunity to take first in the Pacific Division with a win against the Habs. And that was the performance the Edmonton Oilers came out with. Now, yes, it's the second of a back-to-back, your 3rd game in basically 3.5 days. That's tough. I understand that. That's fair. but you got to have a better effort. Now, with that being said, that coming out of my mouth, let's also take the wider angle of this, and the season isn't over. That is not the last game of the season. Oh, no, the Oilers aren't first. There's a lot more games to go on, and over the last, 11 games, 12 games, the Edmonton Oilers are 9-1-2. The Oilers losing their first game in regulation since Vinny Desharnais has made his NHL debut. The Edmonton Oilers are now 30-19-2 and still sitting in a top 3 spot in the Pacific Division, of course, depending on how tonight's games end up. But the Edmonton Oilers aren't in a bad spot. Yes, they lose a game. Yes, they put up a stinker. But the big thing for the Edmonton Oilers is how they respond. The Oilers have a game against the Detroit Red Wings coming up, who last time they played gave them a little bit of a run for their money, but it was a really, really, really good game and had a lot of physicality in it. It was nasty. And we can probably expect that same type of game. I mean, Brett Kulak dropped the gloves as soon as the horn went. There's something that's going to happen in this game, and it is going to be very, very interesting how it turns out. It's also going to be interesting to see whether Tyler Bertuzzi plays in that game and just how much of an impact he has in that one as well, because he could set a tone in that game for the Oilers. But again, the Oilers have a bad game against Montreal. They need to respond in some way. Now, I did say that all Edmonton Oilers had a bad game, but it was one. There was one who didn't, and I think he just got caught up in a bad situation. Not caught up in a bad situation, just bad game for everybody else. But he did shine brighter than all the Edmonton Oilers, and that was Vinny Desharnais. His first game in his hometown with his family there. Yes, the Oilers get their first regulation loss with him in the lineup in front of his family, but I think he can be very proud and going back after that game and going, I was the best Edmonton Oiler, and I would not argue that at all. Set the tone for the Oilers, went after the only guy you really can to try and spark the team. And I mean, Vinny Desharnais, just genuinely take a bow. You have been such a breath of fresh air for the Edmonton Oilers, and being able to watch him play in front of the net and board battles and honestly be able to skate. I was mentioning that now I've been talking about Vincent Desharnais since the start of this season, dating back to training camp, heck, dating back to summer, because if we do remember, I was mentioning that I didn't think the Oilers needed any help on the back end. Yeah. But I was saying that because they had the likes of Vinny Desharnais potentially coming up. Now we're seeing the likes of Michael Kesselring down in the AHL as well. I was also depending on the fact that hopefully we got some development from Evan Bouchard, but we're also seeing development from Philip Broberg. So maybe more in time type stuff, but Vinny Desharnais' big knock since the summer was his East-West game, moving from board to board and playing against those tough players. Now, as Bob Stauffer even pointed out on Oilers Now today, Vinny Desharnais, there had been times where it seemed like he was getting beat, but he just pounded the guy to the boards, and all of a sudden the threat was dissipated. Is that the word I'm looking for? Either way, Vinny Desharnais, everybody knows his north-south game. Everybody knows that he's a big boy who's going to be punishing, but we weren't expecting this. I mean, his offensive game as well is very underrated. That shot he had against the Habs. I mean, even Jack Michaels was going, that was 130 miles an hour. Like, there's something to him, and he's developing right in front of our eyes too. It's great to see. So, quick shout out to Vinny Desharnais, the one Oiler who shined in that absolutely horrendous game for the Oilers in Montreal. Either way, let's wrap up today's episode with the good, the bad, and the ugly from that game in Montreal and the game against the Ottawa Senators. Both games over the weekend. I think this is a first. But either way, we'll talk about that in just a second. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Yes, from deep, Kawhi Leonard. And speaking of Los Angeles, no, I'm not going to talk about the Clippers, who are the better team in Los Angeles, but I'm not going to say anything. I'm talking about the worst team in Los Angeles, and that is the Lakers. And the Lakers have a good old matchup tonight against the Portland Trail Blazers. And right now, taking a look at that money line, plus 116 for Lakers. Underdogs, I'm shocked. Maybe a day. LeBron's out. Maybe, I'm just saying, the Clippers are probably the better team in Los Angeles. I probably would go against the Lakers, but they are underdogs tonight. Is it worth it? Maybe, but we all know LA's not purple and gold anymore. Either way, that is my own vendetta. Let's move on. FanDuel even lets you combine bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. Maybe you can do that with the Lakers game tonight, maybe saying they lose, and no, Taylor Horton Tucker got traded. Either way, Russell Westbrook, nah, he's traded too. That's what I'm saying. The Lakers are bad. Either way, don't miss out on a chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That is FanDuel.com/LockedOn to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Alrighty, let's wrap up today's episode with the good, the bad, and the ugly from both weekend games on Saturday and Sunday, both 10:30 a.m. Honestly, I should change my ugly to 10:30 a.m. Puck drop. You know what? I didn't mind it. I was already up for soccer anyways. Might as well just flick the channel as soon as the United game's over. Either way, the good from the weekend is Vinny Desharnais. I already talked about him in Montreal, but it doesn't end in Montreal, as Vinny Desharnais allowed no goals at 5-on-5 against the Habs, which is saying something considering, Actually, he didn't allow any goals at 5-on-5 against the Habs or the Ottawa Senators. He was an even zero. Well, it wasn't an even zero, but had an even zero of goals against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Unbelievable weekend for him in that sense. Defense, or on shorthanded, especially against the Habs, not so much, but that is what it is. He also fought, as mentioned, Arber Xhekaj in his first NHL game, set the tone for the Oilers in a game they needed to wake up in. In fact, I didn't even mention in the last one, Arber Xhekaj didn't return after fighting Desharnais. Haven't heard an update on what it could be for Xhekaj yet. Hopefully it's not too bad, because we all, honestly, we all love watching Wi-Fi play. So hopefully he's not hurt, but it is a testament to his skill, I guess, in fighting, or his size, his grit, whatever. Good for Vinny. I'm very, very pumped for Vinny. Also, let's get into a couple of advanced stats for him here. At goals for per 60 minutes, goals for, not goals against, goals for per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. I'm sorry if you're watching on video. This is a whiteboard eraser. I wasn't holding that all show. I just realized that was in the shot. But goals for per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 is a 3.27, which is fourth for the Edmonton Oilers this weekend, behind Klim Kostin, who has been injured, who did leave early in that Ottawa game. We will talk about the potential of that on tomorrow's episode. But behind Klim Kostin, Brett Kulak, and Darnell Nurse. He was fourth behind those three players in goals for per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, and his first NHL regulation loss. Now, that doesn't sound like a plus, but it's pretty impressive considering that is his 12th NHL game. Big run for the big lad, Vinny Desharnais. Now the bad, and this bad doesn't have anything to do really with the Edmonton Oilers directly, but the bad is Anton Forsberg. Unfortunately, you may remember during the game against the Ottawa Senators, Anton Forsberg had to be stretchered off after an apparent knee injury. Now, it's come out that it wasn't just an apparent knee injury, it was 2 knee injuries. As genuinely, I'd never heard of this, and I wish the fastest recovery to Anton Forsberg, because this is just awful. He has tears in both MCLs, so that is one of the muscles that hold in basically your knee in place. That is not a good injury. 1 MCL tear is not great. 2 to both knees, not fantastic. It is the opposite side of the ACL, so not fantastic. He is out 2 to 3 months. A speedy recovery to him, honestly, because that was a tough scene to see, obviously in pain, and I believe it was Louis who said it. Goaltenders know their bodies better than most athletes, considering the positions they have to put themselves in, and once you saw the absolute despair, basically, from Anton Forsberg's face, you knew it was bad. So speedy recovery to him. The bad from this weekend is that just a difficult scene. And the ugly is the Super Bowl Sunday for the Oilers. Now, I specifically say Super Bowl Sunday because historically, the Edmonton Oilers are 5-4-0-1 on Super Bowl Sunday. Let's just stop having the Oilers play on Super Bowl Sunday. How about that? No, it's just not worth it. Potentially the reason why the Oilers lost, although it would make more sense if they played tonight and they lost. But either way, the good from the weekend, Vinny Desharnais with just an absolute career weekend, and can't wait to see. Getting his first NHL fight against Arbor Xhekaj, no goals against at 5-on-5, and his first regulation loss in the NHL. Again, doesn't sound like a positive, but pretty impressive in 12 games. The bad, the Anton Forsberg injury, as he is out 2 to 3 months with 2 MCL tears. However, it does also open up the door for former Medicine Hat Tiger Mads Søgaard, who is tied for the tallest NHL goaltender. He's playing against the Calgary Flames tonight. Congratulations to him. So there's a little bit of back and forth, but a speedy recovery to Anton Forsberg. And the ugly Super Bowl Sundays, the Edmonton Oilers were 5-4-0-1 heading into that game against the Montreal Canadiens. Yeah, well, that's not like that anymore. Let's wrap up today's episode on that. The Edmonton Oilers are back in action against the Detroit Red Wings on Wednesday. That one's going to be a banger. Either way, on tomorrow's episode, we're going to talk about why Evan Bouchard may be expendable to the Oilers. That may be an interesting conversation. Either way, let's wrap it up there, folks. Thank you for tuning in on today's episode. Hopefully you have a wonderful Monday. And I know the Oilers had a tough Sunday, but hopefully after Saturday, you could play La Bamba, baby.